Jen, can you do roll call, please?
Tom McDonald,
Here.
Anita Matt,
Present.
Jennifer Finley,
Here.
Jim Molitor,
Here.
Carol Langford,
Here.
Len Tucci, Bing Matt,
Here.
Ellie Bundy,
Present.
Martin Charlo,
Present.
Mike Dolson,
I'm here.
James Steele Senior.
Thank you, Jen. Len, would you start us out with the prayer today? Len. We have our minutes for March 22nd before you for your consideration. Go ahead, Carol.
On page, I don't know what page it is. It's when CT Camel came in and it was a fire prevention advertisement that I was talking about. Maybe on the second or third page. Yeah, page what? 2? Yeah, where Martin Charlo liked the program and looked at having an electric fleet, and then I mentioned something about the advertisement. If you could put that fire prevention advertisement. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Martin.
thank you. On that same paragraph, could I put it was more of a widespread recommendation about the electric fleets, so it wasn't just specific to this program. I would hope that the entire organization would start looking into those. So thank you.
Any other corrections or
Motion, Mr. Chair.
motion by Carol to approve the minutes of March 22nd with corrections? Second by Mike. Any further discussion? All those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous. Okay, we have our agenda before you, our draft agenda. Is there any additions or changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Nita.
I had my district meeting and I just wanted to update the council on that from last night. Thank you.
Any other additions to the agenda? All righty. Motion by Ellie to approve the agenda with the addition. Is there a second? Second by Anita. All those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous. All right. Thank you. So let's start with our walk-in guest. We have a special guest this morning.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce Shoni Malding. She sits on our MMIP work group and has since the beginning. She's also the lady who did the beautiful quilt in the back of the room for us. And we've used that at all of our events, conferences, things that we've had. And she also just created a banner for us to use when we're out doing awareness events. So she wanted to present the banner to council today. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit about the banner and then another project that she's worked on. But I'll let her say what she wants to say, and then we'll pull the banner out and share it with all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Shoni.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for your efforts and what beautiful work you do. Go ahead.
Thank you. Oh, okay. I'm nervous. I want to give a little bit of history about the quilt back there first, because that will make more sense about the banner that I'm presenting today. And first, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here today and present this. It was in 2019 at the first work group meeting. And before that winter, I had been thinking that I want to do quilts with purpose, not just make them. And it came into my head because of the MMIP that would be a good thing to do. So I came to the first meeting not really knowing anybody. And my original idea was that the quilt would be for a fundraiser because we always need money for everything. It became a very emotional process for me. Jermaine disappeared the night of my birthday, so I will always know and feel connected to her. I did not meet her, but because of that birthday connection and her disappearance, I feel that. And throughout the process of making the quilt, there were many things that came into my head because there's so many stories out there, some of which I heard that first night at the work group meeting. And one of them was Leilani Upham, whose grandmother was murdered on the Fort Belknap res in the 1950s. And that just couldn't leave my head as I was working on the quilt. I grew up in the Deer Lodge Valley on a farm ranch, and later it was commercial beekeeping. And my farm grandmother, who is white, I had inherited just a little bit of vintage fabric from the farm, from feed sacks. And I'm kind of like selfish with that, but I knew I finally had to use it. So one of the squares in that quilt is in remembrance of Leilani's grandmother, because I felt that my grandmother and her grandmother should have that connection with that feed sack fabric. And I later made a separate, just a little block for Leilani that she could put her coffee cup on or something like that. My mom also played into this. I'm Shoshone. My grandfather, 3 greats back, came up from southern Idaho and dropped his son off at Fort Hall, but brought his daughter up to the Bitterroot. And he camped quite a bit with the Salish in the Bitterroot in the 1800s, and then later died in the camp, I'm sure of natural causes. I also have the stories of when my great-great-grandmother was married to a white guy, and they had a house on Sweat House Creek. And the family stories are that the Salish would come and camp along the Sweat House Creek with down on that property. I always regretted that I never asked my great-grandmother more, because I was 24 when she died. But when you're a child, I don't think you think of those things. And And she lived at Victor and I lived over at Deer Lodge, so I didn't get to see her much, but I treasure those moments that I was alone with her. The way my mom's connected with this is she had Alzheimer's and died that March when I was just getting ready with this whole idea, but she had a lot of quarters saved up. So I went to Walmart one day and that red fabric was on a really good sale. So I used those quarters and bought a bunch of red fabric, and that was always her color to me. So that was another reason why it was emotional, because of my Indian mom and her death, but yet the whole thing was the stars in the quilt to me represent those who have passed or are missing, but it also represents hope. I'm looking at my notes. And then also I had a close friend in the Deer Lodge Valley. We weren't close physically much, but she was Gypsy and Jewish. And she was murdered by her husband in 2012. So Tina would enter my mind. The state legislature was also meeting that year. And that was one of the things about, do we front the $100,000 for the task force or not, which was controversial, but did end up passing. When I bought that red fabric that day, because I bought about 10 yards of it, and the Walmart clerk was like, well, what are you going to do with all this? So I told her I was making an MMIP quilt, and she got really angry at, I thought she was angry at me, but she was really upset because the state legislature wasn't moving along with that task force. So I was glad that the media was getting it out, the issue out to other people, so the clerk knew about that. Sometimes I got really tired of making the quilt because I wanted it to move along a little bit faster. And then I would think, well, it's nothing compared to the families of those whose people are missing or murdered. And I would just kind of berate myself and say, hey, quit, because I have it so much better than the families who don't know anything. So getting back to the banner, it was in my thoughts since 2020. That was the last work group meeting that we physically met, and the quilt can't be easily moved. So I knew that I wanted to make something that could be moved, that could be used in parades or as table skirting. So that's the purpose for this. I thought of all kinds of different ideas. I started it on July 16th of last year, which is a month of celebration. And my husband Ron and I had gone to the treaty talk earlier that day, and that's when I started finally cutting things out. And I finished it last October, the month of hunting. I think that at this point, I'm ready to have it opened. I'm gonna have to stand up, so should I just keep talking? It's 8 feet long by 27 inches wide.
Wow, that's
Oh,
cool.
I'm so glad to hear that.
So cool.
Wow. I had different ideas, like with the hands, I wanted those to be in the center and I wanted it to be like a dance fan. And the hands were the first thing I cut out, and my husband came upstairs and I had it laid on the bed. He stood there and looked at it and looked at it, and I thought, oh, I know he's thinking I can't talk right now. And he goes, well, what about a face? And my brain is screaming, no, I've never done a face. I don't want to do a face. That will take forever. No. but I respected what he said, and there's a face. I did not put a hand over the mouth like a lot of the MMIP is, and a couple of people have noted that to me, but I was not led to do that. It just didn't occur to me with this. Each time before I would start to work on it, I would pray about it, that I would be able to honor the MMIP with this. I had taken a picture of Jermaine's billboard down by I-90 and then just printed out a little black and white picture of her, and I set it so I could always see her. So after I would do the prayer, I just look over at Jermaine's picture and go, okay, Jermaine, here we go. You know, what's happening today? And this didn't have the emotional impact as making the quilt. I think, I don't know why, because to me, it was still very serious and I knew it had to be done. I don't know why. Maybe it was because I felt like Jermaine was helping me, and I know for certainly the creator was definitely helping me. The feathers are three-dimensional on that. A couple of years ago, I read about the Orange Shirt Day up in Canada. So I knew I wanted orange on it to represent the boarding schools. And this was before it was really talked much down in the States. And then the yellow has got dragonflies on it. Quite a while ago, a friend of mine, Jennifer Ferguson, who lives on the Colville Res, and she is at the Sinixed, the Arrow Lakes band, and she had told me about dragonflies representing water. So the dragonflies are for the water compact. I guess when we had a 3-day event in August of 2019, I was asked to spend a few minutes talking about the quilt in the back. And I ended it with quilts with purpose, lives with purpose, live it, teach it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shoni. What a
Thanks.
beautiful thing to do. And
Thank
your
you.
consideration is wonderful.
Thank you. Oh, and I brought something else. This is a pin cushion. It's made with buffalo hair and Pima cotton. Buffalo hair from Laura Wheeler there on Airport Road. And then the Pima cotton comes from a cotton grader who's a friend of ours down at New Mexico. But Quilting Art Magazine always has a reader challenge. So they had a challenge for a pin cushion. And this ended up being in the summer issue last year. I think it was picked because it was unusual and that's what they wanted. And then they've printed the whole write-up, which I'm really excited about because I mentioned big medicine in it. When I was a kid, we always went, not always, we'd sometimes go over to Helena to the museum and big medicine was there. And that was always like the big deal. That was really the only thing I wanted to see was him. So I hope you guys are successful in getting him back here where he belongs. I also hitch horsehair. That's my business, so to speak. Ron was hobby director at Montana State Prison and I was working bees in the family business and Dad laid me off because of farm economics. And there aren't that many jobs over in Deer Lodge. So Ron said, well, why don't you learn how to hitch, write a book, and teach workshops? So that's what I did. And I had been told by a junior high teacher at Deer Lodge growing up that I wasn't an artist, don't even bother. And I believed that for many years. I think the hitching has gotten me to the point where I was able to do like things that I'm doing now, where before I wouldn't have had the confidence to do that. So that's just another another side. So thanks for listening to me go on and on.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your concern about getting big medicine back here. We all share that, so we hope we're successful. So thank you for your donation and your work. Tremendous. Thank you. Thank you. I use that as an excuse with my wife every night when my head is empty. And I have to keep it empty so I can fill it up when I come to work. So thanks again, Shoni. Jen, do we have any more walk-ins? Nope. Okay. Anita, first one, I apologize, Anita, didn't attend the district meeting. It was the first day of my grandkids softball. So I had softball duty as a grandparent.
Go ahead.
I have a couple of executive things about the meeting. So I don't know. I think we want to leave it open so everybody can listen, but maybe later on I'll bring up the other issues.
Thank you, Carol. And I'd like to thank Carol and Martin as well. Martin always makes the time to run down there and get us online with the Facebook. So I really appreciate that. And the Zoom, like to thank Carol. She's been working hard trying to help with the meetings and getting things coordinated. Last night, it was just absolutely awesome. We had probably 10 youth sitting at the table from the Dixon School and the agency. The kids are eager. They're excited about that basketball project that we got going down, the basketball, and brought up some excellent ideas with Zane about putting up benches and just little things you kind of forget. But we had a full house. I mean, we had like 25 meals, and I think they went in the first 30 minutes. But we got to visit with MRL. They sent one representative down, and then Denny Washington sent John down, and then an individual named Andy. So we got to speak with them about the concern the communities had on the railroad and the safety, and brought up a few ideas to them that not only about repairing the crossings, but maybe something they could do for the community, being that we're trying to clean it up and make it safer. And they're going to bring our concerns back. So I was really happy that they showed up. Law and Order didn't come. I don't know if we got wires crossed or whatever, but we actually filled it in with the community anyway, so it worked out well. I just wanted to mention while we were sitting there, and it was concerning to me, and I'm going to air it with public, is the disrespect and the disregard for the people down there. We were sitting there, and it wouldn't have been an hour before a lady in a wheelchair and her husband walked to the meeting house. There was kids running all over. They brought a meal down to one of our elders down there, walking up and down. And we were sitting there talking, and all of a sudden I looked out the window, and we just got through talking about that well. We redug that well 3 times and finally got a good one. But an individual in a Chevy pickup, older Chevy pickup in the 80s, shot across that football field. And he had to have been going 80 miles an hour and shot right across that football field. I don't know who it was, but I mean, there was all kinds of people walking, between the kids walking back and forth and coming in and out of the meeting. So total disrespect. I wish that there was a way that we could get more coverage down there with our Law and Order. I can understand the people's concern. But otherwise, I think we're moving along with the project. Like Carol says, we're finding more. You know, it's so dark down there. I mean, Carol and I walked out, and honest to God, I was feeling like this, and there's no lights at our building. I'm hoping that we can talk Mission Valley Power and get the council support and get some lights, because it's pretty dark down there and it's dangerous, but everything went really well. I think Carol's going to touch on a couple things in executive that we need to talk about, but I was really pleased with the turnout. The people are excited. I mean, you would not believe, you could just feel the energy in the room, and having them youth sit at that table and it being about the youth, you know, trying to give them something to do. We talked about the Boys and Girls Club and maybe some kind of pilot project this year to see how much interest we have, but everybody is really excited. We've got the test that's going to be done on the house come Monday, and Mary Rose Morjo has worked on that. And she actually got it in a grant to no expense. So I really appreciate Mary Rose as well. I think everything's moving along. We're looking at that April 13th through the 15th. And the kids are coming down to help us clean. Yeah, I was just really impressed. It was a good meeting. I left there with a really, you know, good feeling of heart. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that if you guys want to look at something. I'm pretty impressed. We even had a couple residents from the Dixon town site, you know, so they were there as well to see what was going on. They're also anxious. The bison range has got them, you know, now that we took over the management of it, and they're going to be going by there like they were telling MRL about wanting it to look good. So yeah.
Anita, just a question in regards to your conversation with the railroad folks. Did they give you any indication that they would be in their generosity provide any type of donation to the project?
I did ask. I mean, that they kind of got hit hard. I guess that whoever sent them there, I think, should have gave a little history. They knew that we had been negotiating on this since September with legal. You know, our lawyers are talking with theirs, but they seemed like they were going to take back the concerns. I don't think they realized how the residents really felt so unsafe. And a couple of the residents down the road that's got the railroad cars still parked there was concern about the safety. I think he mentioned Donald Trump had legislation about leaving parked cars, and they had blown up or something. And I hadn't even thought about that. He said they make noise all night long, shifting and cold and hot. But I think that the residents were pretty good about, you know, illustrating why they were concerned and how dangerous it was, and that they have not been managed in years. You know, there's a screws sticking up and all kinds of stuff, giving flat tires. And, you know, I just don't think that the individuals had thought about it. But I think when they left there last night, they had a pretty good list. But before they left, I actually asked about what they could possibly do to make it safer. Mentioned a couple ideas, you know, with gated, like a gated community, and they said they'd bring it back and ask. We talked about lighting, you know, anything to help us with the safety and the.
Okay, yeah, Anita, I know from previous conversations, we did acknowledge that there was a tribal member security firm that we do have that's on the Indian preference list that we can probably, we should look at maybe engaging and look at having them working down in Dixon and just kind of like a pilot project to test it out to see how that works for them. Anything we can do to help them folks, because yeah, I understand how they're feeling by just feeling left out. So thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lynn. Go ahead.
Thanks,
Carol.
Anita. Yeah, I want to just say, when I was driving home last night, I just had a fear, a terror come over me, like, man, what if we really can't do something to change this? Because you just listen to the people down there, just talking to Montana Rail Link. And right now, currently, I'm working, and I shouldn't probably be doing this during council. I am doing a thank you letter to those two gentlemen. His name is John Benning He's from Washington Corporation, and then Andy Garland, who is Montana Rail Link. And doing them a thank you letter, but also including those strong messages that the community had about, I did not know this, and you guys probably all did, but the agency was locked off by those trains for 3.5 hours, and a house burnt down during that time. And so nobody could get in or out. And it was like the biggest fear for that community to say, nobody's gonna help. Can you imagine? It's almost feeling of a third world country. And so I'm like, that message was very strong. So I'm including that in here. And then also the planks that go across the railroad, it flattens tires, it damages cars. And so I'm gonna put that in here too also. And then where those trains are parked, there was a solution last night that the community gave to these two gentlemen, is to park it along. And I thought, oh, here's the scenic river. Park it along the river where it doesn't close off any access to anybody and their residents, including the McLeods, because that's the big issue, is that family is definitely hindered. It's only 200 feet from their homes. And there's also, I guess, a tunnel. I had never heard about this tunnel, but the tunnel is falling in. And I don't know if it's underneath the railroad track that they're talking about, or if it's between the two homes, but it sounds pretty dangerous. And they say that that's gonna go anytime. And so I think somebody better look into that. Talk to, is it Demas that was down there, Anita?
It was actually, Rick was there,
Right.
but he also mentioned his brother Demas, who lives right next to him, and they've never moved those cars. They're still there.
Yeah, and so I would have somebody talk to one of those and ask him where this tunnel is that's about ready to fall in, and that was his huge concern. He said, I'm waiting for that to happen anytime. That's what Rick said. But anyway, so I'm doing this message to both of these individuals, thanking them, you know, for coming down and listening to the community, because they were pretty strong about what they wanted to see done. So, and then also I brought up the funding too about, you know, I said, we're doing projects down here and we can certainly use the money. Len, you know, we kind of try to pound that home too. You know, you guys got a railroad coming through this, and this is Montana Rail Link spur, and they're going to retain that spur. They're not giving it to Burlington Northern Santa Fe, or not selling it to them. So that's, it's always going to be Montana Rail Link. And so we didn't really get into too many issues on what we could do, but we just gave them a solution about moving those trains over along the river or somewhere else where it's not hurting residents. And so after that was done, we talked about the cleanup, and Anita did say 13th through the 15th. We have a tree removal going on. We talked to Rick about that. There's an issue with it, and that's one of the issues I wanted to talk in executive, but maybe Rick will look at it and resolve it before that it even comes to a head. And then Anita talked about the roads last night that are going to be redone by the roads program, and a few trees being taken out by them. So we're really excited about that. And that's a 2-year phased project. The lights around the basketball court, we realize that that's critically important. So we're going to do that. And the arbor that's going in at the end of the football field by the water spigot. And there's going to be a dry meat rack down there too. And that'll be at the north end of the football field. So we're looking at that. And then the walking path and the river access, we're waiting for Tom. When his people get that information back to us, we'll get that. And then I just called Mission Valley Power, one of the board members, and Rick's going to do a letter for your signature. There is no lighting down there, as Anita said, and we need to make sure that that is a part of this whole process, because you can't see nothing. And if there's people walking around there all night long and all this craziness going on, you know, I think the lights will deter it, along with cameras and other things. And so, you know, it's pretty exciting. I sent around the basketball court. It's a three-pronged basketball court. It's one for adults, one for kind of like middle schoolers, and then the smaller courts are for the little kids. So everybody can have things going on at the same time. And then also on the south side of that basketball court, there's going to be a small water feature for kids, little kids can go out and play. You know how kids love to play in the water. So that was talked about by Zane and Pitts, and he's really doing, I mean, everybody, Lee Grant, I can go just down the list of people who were coming together to really make this all possible. But there's a couple of things in executive I wanted to mention. There was names brought up of a couple of community members that, you know, really need to clean up their act. I mean, it's just party house from party house to party house, and it's got to stop. And one kid had just received his 18 money, and I guess he kind of went wild the night before the meeting. And so I don't know, there's a couple of strong men in that community that can really step up and help us. And the kids too, I was so impressed with those kids, and they want to make a difference. They want to do things different. So when you hear them saying, and either they're going to get caught up into all this, or we can help them change it. I mean, I think they're willing and ready to do that. So thank you, Anita, for giving me the opportunity to go on and on and on.
Thank you, Carol, for all your help. She's really jumped in, and her and Martin and all of you for your support. I mean, I look back and I can remember a time when those 5 individuals come in here and executive and beg for our help. We felt like we weren't listening, but
The
they-
law enforcement idea was definitely strong, but I also wanted to mention there's 2 people that volunteered to come in and spray the homes rather than us going in and painting them. So we figured out what we're gonna need in paint wise, you know, it gets up to $7,000 or $8,000, but they'll come in and spray them, and then we'll just go behind them and do the trim and stuff like that. So we've got volunteers like that are willing to help out with the community, and that's pretty spendy for a company to come in and say, yeah, we'll do this. So
Great update, Anita. Carol, thank you. As far as the building itself, the new building, was there a reason why there wasn't an aerial light put in with that?
I don't know if it just got left out. I know before that, prior to, I had Mission Valley Power go down because a lot of the lights were knocked out and shot out. So they went down, and anything that was broke, they replaced. But they said at that time with the residents, unless they paid that $10 a month or whatever for a light, but there's areas there, like I said, Carol could show you, it's pitch dark. You couldn't see 2 feet in front of you. And very dangerous. We definitely need a light there at the building so people can see coming out.
Yeah, I would just assume that would be a standard protocol for a tribal building, a community building, that we would have a night light. That'd be part of that facility. So part of our liability that we'd want to take care of immediately.
maybe the question is when the roads go in is probably the most appropriate time to put new lights in, right? Would that be a part of that? I mean, doesn't that go hand in hand with curb and gutters?
Yeah, sometimes it could be
Sidewalks.
part of the project. It can be. If you're gonna put underground wiring, you know, connecting lights, then you'd want to lay that in before you do your final road prep and asphalting, just like you do your water lines and sewer lines.
Okay, and like I said, Rick's gonna do a letter for you, and we'll have to bring it to council to send to the board to see what they can do.
I would just imagine we would want to have Lisa put an aerial light at the tribal building as soon as possible.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
I mean, like you were saying, just the lights off the building would be great. I mean, I don't understand how, I mean, they don't even have, like, it's a trailer, so it should have porch lights, and it doesn't even have that. So, I mean, we need the bare minimum, and hopefully maintenance can do that for us.
Sounds good. Well, I'll ask Lisa and Rick to facilitate that as soon as possible. Any other items? Go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just mention this briefly. Some time ago, it was brought to our attention that there was a break-in over at the Alamo Maintenance Center. And it was requested by some of the community members to see if we can get a security system set up there or something. And I would just like us to follow up on that. And also in regards to the maintenance center there. I'm not sure if you guys been in there. I know Bing's been in there during the spring thaw when it's really muddy. I mean, it's an area where you can't even drive into. And I brought this up here 2 years ago about what we can do to get that maybe some gravel brought in and potentially paved at some point in time. But it's something that we need to follow up on and have our staff look at that. So. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Okay, did you want to go into executive, Carol, now or at the end of the day? A few minutes right now. Can we move into executive? If we move into executive session.